So recently, some customers asked us, how does Retlia compare to other options like Power BI or Domo? And with both of those systems, what happens is, first of all, each of the data sets that you bring in are inherently kept separate. They're kept in their own silos as their own separate data sets in each of those competitive platforms. So if you have multiple websites or you have data from different systems like your ERP, your POS, your website, marketing, inventory, finance, each of those is kept as its own data set, or sometimes many data sets in these systems, these competitive systems. And so in order to get a single KPI or maybe a full dashboard built off of two of these data sets, what you would need to do is build a flow or a merge or an ETL, depending on what it's called in different systems, that combines data across two of these data sets. And that thing, you have to build it, and you're fixing the data within it. You're making sure that the data lines up right and has clear definitions and it's clean and ready for reporting. Then you need to run that data flow or that transformation, and you need to build some KPIs and look at them. And generally you'll find, oh, there's something not quite right here. And so you'll kind of go on an iterative process. You'll go back, you'll clean and join and fix this data a little bit more. It'll take an hour to run again. You'll look at it again. And sometimes this process is repeated over and over, to where usually people who work in a system like Domo or Power BI will give you an estimate of anywhere from 4 to 40 hours for each KPI or report or dashboard that you want to build. And that's going to happen each time you need to build data. So let's say you took a look at this dashboard and you said, now we need to add some more data from our inventory system. You need to go through this whole process again, where you need to merge in the data, let it run, take some time, look at it, clean it, merge it again, fix it, repeat. And so this will happen each time, not only each dashboard or KPI that you build, but then each time you look at it, your executives discuss it or your team discusses it, you get more questions. You're going to have to go back to the well and do this again for each type of report that you build. And this will happen over and over and over for all these different combinations. And then sometimes you get to a point where you've already built one of these merges where you're merging two of these pieces of data or data flows or whatever you call it in your system. But it's kind of become such an unruly mess and nobody really knows what's going on, that you then go and build that same join again. And this time it has slightly different rules or different cleanup for a slightly different purpose. And you get to a point where you might be reporting on the same thing, like what were our gross sales of this product last year? And you get two different numbers. And that really sows confusion throughout the organization. Or you may get that number reported from two different joins. Well, this join that happens to include this e-commerce and that join which happened to not include it or include it in a slightly different way are showing different numbers. And so now you're creating confusion throughout your company, and it's hard to make decisions based on data. And then finally, you go and you say, well, we want to create a 360 profile of something like a customer or our products maybe. And you need to add a bunch of data from across all of these systems about the customer into one big data. But you quickly find that products like Power BI and Domo are not built to handle all of these different types of data, 5 or 6 of these data sets in one. It becomes too big. This processing power goes up hours and even days. And they start to upcharge you for the size of this data set to try to create a profile. If those systems could handle all of this data merged together, they would. They wouldn't keep these all separate as silos. But unfortunately, that's not what happens. So in summary, other systems often have problems with performance. Data is kept small and separate because of that. It can be slow and labor intensive. Every time you want a new piece of information, somebody has to go to spend 4 to 40 hours. It can be inconsistent in the cleanups and the logic. You can find missing or repeating or conflicting data sets across the same questions. The customer data set or other big data sets like a product profile, it really becomes limiting. This also really happens with things like marketing attribution. And you'll find that there'll be exponential labor to add new systems. Let's say you created a new website. Well, now all of these joins you have to add again. You have to create more of these that include the new website. And so you have exponentially more labor and maintenance. And so the maintenance of keeping all this up to date, knowing what's in there, it just becomes really, really painful. In summary, some of these systems really, what you end up with is a costly, very limiting, slow mess. Now, in honesty, they can be a little bit better than trying to fumble through all of this with just spreadsheets or really basic reporting that you might find in something like an ERP. But really, this is not what we want, and it's a costly limiting mess. Contrast that with data warehousing. In data warehousing, what you would do is you would bring in each of those different data sets, but you have a system that has the high performance that's needed to interconnect all of that data at once up front. All of the cleanups and fixes and logic, it's done before you ever create a single data set. And you have one data set that you can do all of your reporting off of. So in order for me to create some of these reports or dashboards, it really takes seconds or minutes or at most hours. It does not take many hours or days to create dashboards when you have one data set. This one data set is already cleaned, already fixed. You already know what's in there. You're trained once, and it really gets to the point where even people who aren't analysts or data professionals can use it because it's a known quantity. It doesn't take all of this joining and cleaning. You just have to look at, well, what piece of data do I want? Double click on it, and then that creates your visualization based on it. And so really you enter kind of a whole new realm where things that used to take hours or weeks now take seconds or at most hours for the more complex ones. Anyone in the business can do it, not just an analyst or an IT person. The scale allows your important data to be stored together. All the logic is consistent. You don't have conflicting numbers and confusion throughout your organization. Things like your customer, your product, or sales or marketing data can be 360 degrees. All of your data in one place about things like marketing attribution or your customer or your product. Exponentially less time is spent. When you want to extend it to add a new type of data, it extends easily. You just tag it on. You don't have to change anything. It just kind of automatically flows through. And this is all very low maintenance and low cost. That's one of our keys in this data warehouse, is it has to be easy and really able to maintain it without IT. And we have some really strong customer testimonials that attest to this taking very little time, anybody in the organization being able to use it, and it not really requiring IT. But finally, I will note that once you've created this powerful integrated data set for commerce companies like yours, it actually can be sent to other platforms. We have an AI plugin where you can chat with your data, and it can be sent to some programs like Power BI if they are light enough and they can run this amount of data with high performance. That's even the power of Retlia and data warehousing, in that a lot of the calculation happens on our platform, so it can be sent to something like Power BI. It may work that way for some smaller companies with smaller data sets in Domo as well and other competitors. But your data warehouse can work with systems like Power BI, but it makes it a lot more valuable and usable after all the calculation and the integration happens underneath in the data warehouse layer. When you buy Power BI or Domo, you're given a tool that you can go and create all of these, data joins, and you can create everything. When you buy from Retlia, you're given a finished product. This data is already cleaned and already joined, and we create several of the dashboards and KPIs that are most important for companies like yours before we ever deliver it to you. So you spend no time instead of 4 to 40 hours for each thing that you want to report on. And so in conclusion, there's a huge difference. While those other tools can be valuable and helpful if you have nothing, for usually a cheaper price, we can deliver something that's really complete and finished and is a whole nother realm of possibility for a similar price and time frame.